guys, this is Dunk again. I want to talk to you about the PTR 2.4 Demon Hunter and its current state in the game and how the sets are functioning and how much they changed and how they stand in the Greater Rift rankings. I will ignore the legacy of Nightmare Strings because we all know they are overpowered and they will be toned down, and we still don't know how they will end up in this game. So I just focus on the sets because this is what a Demon Hunter is, and I hope I can give you a nice overview and some power ranking for those, because I tried them all and I do have my favorites. Alright, I will talk about those sets in particular in this order. I will talk about the Shadow set, which looks pretty kick-ass. I love that set, it looks good, it fits to the Demon Hunter, and apart from the issue that maybe this male Demon Hunter has some serious back issues, everything is fine here. Then I will talk about the Marauder Demon Hunter and the changes it received, which are mainly damage changes, like damage buffs in different items and the set itself. But yeah, the optics of that set are not fitting to the Demon Hunter. It more looks like a Juggernaut's helmet or something, of some person that wants to slam through doors with his head or something. This doesn't fit to the Demon Hunter. I don't know who designed stuff like that for a Demon Hunter. Well, anyways, it's about the sets. Okay, and the Unhallowed Essence set is the next, because it didn't receive so many changes, mainly damage changes, and it still looks like shit in my opinion, but that's whatever you think about it. And lastly, I will talk about the Natalia spec, which didn't receive any changes basically, just a change in the cooldown reduction that you get from it. But this doesn't really help actually, because the damage output is not really coming too much from the Reign of Vengeance stuff anymore. Alright, but now let's first, you can click on the links in the descriptions to directly jump to the explanation about those sets. And now let's talk about a few items that are new for the Demon Hunter. And there is this, I start with the dagger, Carlay's Point. This is the Impale dagger. Impale returns 13 hatred if it hits an enemy that has already been impaled. It's up to 15 hatred. That means that when you have some amount of resource cost reduction, your second impale and all others are basically hatred free. If you use that with the Ricochet rune, you will end up having some sort of generator as long as you have more than one target to hit. And this is the reason why Impale Ricochet is the best rune that we have so far. Alright, this is good for the Shadow set. Then we have a sword. This is the Sword of Ill Will, which means that chakrams deal up to 1.4% increased damage for every point of hatred that you have. This is very, very strong for the chakrams, and this is also mainly used in the Shadow set and a mixture of Shadow and Marauder set, which I will talk about as well, and you can have the link for that in the description as well. Then there's the dagger, Lord Greenstone's fan, that every second your fan of knives receives up to 300% damage buff, which stacks up to 30 times. This is a pretty interesting concept because it doesn't really matter how much cooldown reduction you have, you profit from that dagger always in the same way. So if you could spam Fan of Knives, you won't get anything from that, just for every second 300%, okay. But if you're slow, you get a lot of damage buff, or if you have to skip a lot, or if you walk to the next pack, you will stack up a lot of damage. Okay, this is pretty interesting. I couldn't find a way to really fit it into the Shadow set, but that's a different story. Then the Liana's Wings, Shadow Power also triggers Smokescreen. This is a pretty interesting concept in my eyes, but it has a serious problem. And that problem is that Shadow Power is part of the Shadow set. And the Shadow set requires a melee weapon. So we can't use that in our hands. That means we would have to put it in the cube to get the effect. But then there is something like Dawn. Reduce the cooldown of Vengeance by up to 60%. And this, with the changes to Vengeance, is clearly more powerful than the Liana's Wings. There's no way that this legendary effect can in any way compete with this one here, especially since it's on a one-hand crossbow. If this would sit on, I don't know, a quiver, for example, or maybe even a dagger or a sword, then maybe we could talk about that. But not like this. There's no chance that we will ever use this currently. Alright, there's one more item here. This is a defensive item. This is Zoe's Secret, which increases your toughness for every companion that you have active up to 7%. And this means that if you have a lot of companions, if you're using the Marauder set, you have 7 companions already, then you get a lot of damage reduction. Okay, now there's one more item I can't show you right now because I don't have it, but I have it in a cube. This is the Visage of Juns, whatever, I don't know how to say that. Vengeance gains the effect of the Dark Heart rune. And this leads us to the skill Vengeance and the Dark Heart rune. The Dark Heart rune is this one here. It was, this lightning rune was doing damage around us previously, which is crap for the Demon Hunter anyways. We really don't want to be into strict melee range, even with the Shadow set now. Okay, now Vengeance reduces all damage taken by 50%. That's pretty cool. But look at the change of Vengeance itself. The last point here, Vengeance gain 40% increased damage. Wow. And now remember this one here, reduce the cooldown of Vengeance by up to 60%. Okay, what does that mean for us? That means that in all situations where we can do it, we will use Dawn as the weapon cube or in the hand if possible, and we will then use either directly the Dark Heart rune or in combination with the Visage of Junes, another rune if we need, for example, Hatred from the Seath rune, which is this one here. And then we will also use the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, either in the cube or in a ring slot if we use, for example, the new Endless Walk set. Okay, but so this, in my opinion, it's pretty cool that Vengeance and Dawn are so powerful, but I think it's maybe even too much, or the other options are falling off too much, because this is so strong that we will want to have this up all the time. We want to have permanent Vengeance uptime all the time, whenever possible. Alright, and this is a main problem of the Demon Hunter and maybe of the other classes currently, that whenever we want to use a set, it doesn't matter which set, we are basically forced to use a specific weapon and skill setup. We're always forced to use at least one generator and usually one spender as well. If we use focus and restraint, we're really forced to do that. In the Shadow case, we are forced to use Shadow Power as well. Okay, it's a good skill. We're also forced to use Vengeance Dark Heart or any other Vengeance rune at that if we have the Dark Heart in the cube. So that means that there's only 2 skill slots left where we can do something. And actually, that's already a good number, 2 skill slots where we can do whatever we please. In most sets, it's only 1. And this, in my opinion, is not such a good design. If there's 2 or maybe 3 mandatory skills for a set, so that you can use it to good effect, that would be okay. But like that, it's just too much, because there's no alternative. We can't just replace Vengeance with anything. It's too powerful, especially if we can keep it up permanently. Same with Generator and Spender. We don't have a choice. We can't, for example, use a setup where we have Impale and for a single target, and then use something like multi-shot or so for the area effect. It just doesn't work. Not even in the Marauder setup that works. Okay. So that's about that. Now let's talk about the sets, and I will start with part 1. You can also click the other parts in the description if you would like to. Alright, here we go. This is the Shadow set. As I said, it looks pretty cool like this on this guy, and this is what it does. 2-piece, if you have a melee weapon equipped, you get 1000% more damage. This is a lot. 4-piece, Shadow Power gains the effect of every rune and lasts forever. That's pretty cool, pretty powerful. I love that. And 6-piece set, Impale deals an additional 40,000% weapon damage to the first enemy hit. Take heed, it's called weapon damage. It's not increased damage. That means that it's 40,000% here plus 750% here. So in the end, the damage that Impale itself does without that buff is useless. I haven't checked if the skill damage increase to increase Impale damage by 14%, if it's really working on it. I don't know that, but I suspect it should work, but I haven't tested it. This I will test later. Okay, and the setup I use is with the full 6 pieces of the Shadow set, with the Scarlet's Point Dagger for Hatred Regen. I use the Sin Seeker's Quiver because this has one more main stat, and there I can roll area damage. Usually this comes with rapid fire damage boost, but yeah, rapid fire, this is out of the question currently. Okay, rings I use Focus and Restraint. Which one is the best or not is pretty, doesn't matter if you get attack speed, min-max damage. This is not changing the build, it's just maybe one option is a bit more powerful than the other. Amulet, I use Hellfire with the Ambush passive. And here, Wraps of Clarity in the braces. No other choice. Every single Demon Hunter spec uses them because we actually need the toughness. There's no way we can go without the toughness. Belt, I use this Thunder God's Vigor because it adds damage and also has nice toughness. You could use a Witching Hour, but the Witching Hour lacks toughness in comparison and doesn't add more damage actually than a good rolled Thunder Gods because we use lightning. And you could use the String of Ears, for example, but the String of Ears increases our toughness against melee attacks, and if you play the Demon Hunter properly, you will not get too many melee attacks that hit you, actually. And so the Thunder Gods is, in my opinion, the best option here. Good. The skills I use. Thunderballs Bola. You could swap it out, or I did that actually, and it was working as well, to the Freezing Strike, because you then get more crowd control, but the Thunderball regenerates your hatred faster, which is interesting, especially in single target situations. So yeah, I'm torn between those two. Both are good. I don't know which is really the best option. Other than that, I use the Impale Ricochet. There's only one other rune that is pretty interesting because of the dagger. Remember, it regenerates hatred for targets that have been hit already. That's Overpenetration, which pierces all the time, and so you hit many targets in line. The problem here is that it doesn't matter how many targets you actually hit with your Impale, because only the very first attack, the very first monster hit is counting, because this is 40,750% weapon damage versus 750% weapon damage. So all the other targets that you hit don't matter. It's useless. So, but we need to hit more than one target to get good hatred back. So we have Ricochet and we have Overpenetration. But since the targets are usually not lined up perfectly and the positioning for that is pretty hard to do, the Ricochet rune is the better one, because whenever the second monster is in 20 yards range, you can hit it with the Ricochet and then you can fill up your hatred to maximum in a short time, in just 2 hits or what, and then you profit from the Aquila Cuirass. Alright, the other runes, Grievous Wounds, more damage, Chemical Burn, a little bit more damage, Impact, Crowd Control, which we know is useless currently, because on live servers, Crowd Control immunity of the monster stacks extremely fast, and this will be back on PTR because this is a bug that you can control the monsters permanently right now. So there's only those 2 options, and I think the lightning one is just the best one. Okay, then I use Shadow Paw. I use Well of Darkness because it gives me blue wings. The other runes are also pretty good. Nightbane, slow in the area, doesn't matter too much because of one of the passives. Blood Moon, life per hit is doubled. Gloom, more toughness. Shadow Glide, more speed, very cool. Then I use a Sentry Polar Station because of more crowd control and the option to use it with Ice Blink. Vengeance Dark Heart, I was talking about that, just so powerful, we can't skip that. Wolf Companion, here we can talk a bit about it, like we can use Marked for Death with, for example, Grim Reaper, which spreads damage in the area, but this damage is spread between all targets that are in this 20-yard range. So 20% of the damage that you do is spread. But this means that if there's a lot of targets in that area, it's pretty insignificant what the single target receives. So I skip that. I go for Companion because of the gearing. I will go back to that in a moment. Then the passive Thrill of the Hunt, they changed that. This is extremely powerful. I don't see any spec where you can actually not use that. Only in team play, of course. But this slows the monsters so much, and you trigger your Call the Weak and Bane of the Trapped, so this is almost mandatory. Then awareness, of course, we want to survive, steady aim for more damage, and as you have seen in the Hellfire Amulet, the ambush passive. So that gearing speciality I was talking about. Here I use area damage here and here. Maybe in the rings it would be even better than all the other options, because we don't have problems in the single target situation. Just as an example, single target G70 boss kill, Rift Guardian kill is 14 seconds in that spec. 14 seconds. So within the period that one vengeance lasts, I kill the Rift Guardian. That's amazing. That's really a lot of damage. So we don't need more single target damage. We need to somehow have area damage. And this area damage will come from Impale in the combination with area damage. So the thing about area damage, wrong button. The thing about area damage is that it procs with 20% chance of your hits, but only your first hit matters, and all the other hits don't do damage at all, basically, in comparison to that. So you want the first hit you do to deal maximum damage, to crit, and then hopefully to proc area damage. So if this happens with 90% and I do 100 bill crits, and this is not too rare that I do a 100 billion critical hit, then 90 billion critical hit is shared, or not shared, it's done to all the other targets in that area. That means on G70, when that happens, everything is dead, and that's cool. And this brings me back to the issues of the Shadow set. The theoretical power it has for Impale is amazing. It's really strong. It's really strong for single target, but it's so weak for the area effect. So basically the gameplay is that you run around, you check for big targets like Golgors, Unburied, Yellow Elites, the Blues, and so on. You go there, kill them, pick up the globes if it was an elite, and then you go on. You just ignore the small skeletons if you can, and you will hate all guys that summon small crap, like those Tomb Guardians that summon skeletons and others. You will hate them with the Shadow set. And this brings us to the problem. I was able to clear G70. I cleared G70 all the time. I never fail it, but when I try G75, for example, I have a hard time. I think I was like failing it for 1 second. I failed it by 1 or 2 seconds once when I changed to the current build. I think it's pretty possible to do G75, but G80 is out of the question. No chance we're gonna do G80 with that, because we have several issues. One of the issues is the toughness, and the other issue is the area of effect that we have. The toughness that we get with the spec, just show you this, is I have 50 million right now unbuffed. I activate Shadow Power, it's 76 million. I shoot with a generator 160 million, and then I activate Vengeance 230 million with some nice recovery. This is okay, but it's still a low number if you want to go into the 75 plus range. So the toughness might be too low, and the damage on groups is way too low. So we come to the ideas that I have. First off, my idea would be for the Shadow set that first we need Impale to have all runes at once. Put it to the 6-piece, like Impale gains the effect of all runes. You have seen that? Those runes of Impale, Overpenetration, Ricochet, Grievous Wounds, whatever, are pretty okay, but the combination of them would be cool. Just imagine you have Overpenetration, and every single target that you hit procs a Ricochet, and all of them deal more damage and add the fire burn and have the chance to crowd control. With all the crowd control immunity coming, this is okay. I have no problems with that. But then this still would mean that the damage of the additional Impales is too low. So we have to do something there. One of my ideas is that just add another thing that says, for example, every critical hit automatically deals area damage, and boom, we have some area effect. This is just my ideas. Okay, and that's it for the Shadow set. Let's jump on to the next set, which will be the Marauder set. Okay, the Marauder set. The Marauder set itself didn't change too much. It received some damage buffs, like the numbers are scaled up, but that's basically it. The big change that you should note here is that the 6-piece says that the Vengeance is also buffed by 400% for every sentry that you have active. So Vengeance will deal a lot of damage with that set, and Vengeance, as I said before, and I will repeat it once again and again and again, it's such a powerful skill, we can't skip it. Okay, so the setup I used to do runs, and I was clearing G70 on a regular basis. G75 should be possible as well as with the Shadow set. It appears to be a little bit weaker than the Shadow set, even in the current form of the Shadow set, because the numbers seem to be too low, but it is roughly on the same power level. Okay, what did I use here? I used a 6-piece full-grown Marauder set, of course. I use the Zoe's Secret Belt. You know, for every single companion we have, we get the damage reduction. And you can see the damage reduction, actually. You know, it's 7 companions. We have the 2 ferrets. We have 2 flying guys, a bat and a raven. We have the spider, wolf, and boar. That's 7. And 7 times 7, you know, it's 49. You can see that here. That's the plus whatever % number that you see here. You can add 2 additional companions if you use the Cloak of the Garwolf, and then you will end up having 63%. Wow, that's a lot, you know? That's really a lot of damage reduction. So this might be an option for the setup. Okay, but go on. Rings, I use Focus and Restraint. I think you could use with some with attack speed, you could use them with area damage or cooldown reduction. I don't know which option is the strongest, but it's only small variations to the setup. I use a Hellfire Amulet with Ballistics because I use the cold version, and Wraps of Clarity, of course. And now the damage buff that we got from the Marauder set itself is nice, but it's not enough to boost us, so we need more buffs, and those buffs are here. For example, on the Bombardier's Quiver, you get up to 100% increased sentry damage as well from that. So all the very good quivers that you had before and that you stored in your stash are garbage. You cannot roll the 100% on the old quivers, sadly. And a new Manticore, and this has a double effect now. For example, Cluster Arrow increases the damage by up to 100%, and it reduces the hatred cost of Cluster Arrow by up to 50%. So this is a double buff basically. And those 2 items are so strong for Cluster Arrow and for the Marauder set that you can't skip them. You know, previously we were able to use multi-shot with the Marauder setup as well, which was still too weak, of course, because the Marauder setup was way too weak. But we can't do this here because multi-shot requires the legendary quiver, the Deadman's Legacy, but the effect of it only works for the multi-shots that the player itself fires. And additionally, you will lose the buff from the Bombardiers, and you don't have the damage buff on multi-shot on the weapon. So here we are forced into using that one weapon, Manticore. No other choice for the Marauder setup. No other choice in the quiver, no other choice in the belt, no other choice in the wraps. This is a pretty much boring setup because there's no alternative. You can change the element that you use, but that's it. You can use fire for group play, you can use physical for solo play as well as cold. The difference is it's really small. You cannot ever use the Dazzling Arrow anymore because crowd control immunity kicks in extremely fast, and it deals way too low damage and has the problem of bouncing grenades that take a while to blow off. So you either go Shooting Stars or Maelstrom for solo, doesn't matter. And you can use Loaded for Bear in the group play because this just adds more damage than Dazzling Arrow, and that's it. Cluster Bombs is an option as well. Requires a specific gameplay, but if you do it right, the damage is even higher than the one of Loaded for Bear. Okay, but I was using cold. I was clearing G70 with it on a regular basis, no problem. I never fail there. But there's really nothing too new here. So the skills I used for that are Evasive Fire, Focus, just more hatred per shot, Cluster Arrow, of course I was talking, Vault, Tumble, you need some mobility, Sentry Guardian Turret. This adds toughness if you stand in the zone. Why don't I have... Oh, that's the wrong one. Custom Engineering. I should have 3 of those. Okay, Guardian Turret here. It adds toughness, and we need toughness. Vengeance Seath, I was talking about that. Vengeance is just too powerful, and you can imagine I have that specific helm in the cube now. Companion, we need that, doesn't matter which rune you use. Custom engineering, mandatory for the Marauder set. Awareness, mandatory for everything that wants to do higher rifts. Thrill of the Hunt is mandatory as well, as of now, because it's so good for the Demon Hunter. And I have Archery here. You can argue that Archery is not that good with the 50% crit damage. You can use Ambush, for example, or you can maybe use Leech. I wouldn't suggest using Steady Aim because this is an additive buff. It looks nice on the... Oh, actually, here, you use Cull the Weak. Of course, why didn't I do that? I was fooling around with the setup a bit. Okay, that's the reason why, probably. Okay, and the Ballistics passive, because with any rocket stuff, this is just too powerful. And now let's go to the cube. Here in the cube, I have, as mentioned, Dawn. I have Visage of Junes for the Dark Heart rune and the Zodiac Ring. As I said before, this combination is too powerful to skip. And even with a Marauder spec, you can have it up permanently if you hit targets. And look, even with Cluster Arrow, you can spam it quite a lot. It takes a while until it drops, and usually this is already enough to have Vengeance back up. And since we have to stutter step and evade a bit, it happens that you can perma-shoot with the Cluster Arrow. Pretty interesting, but the gameplay is not different than the 2 or 3 seasons away. So, yeah, well, gems are used, Zays, trapped, always, they're so powerful. You can use the Enforcer if you have, for example, a Shadow set a Demon Hunter around. You can use, or should use, Bane of the Stricken if you're solo. And then you have the other options of the Gogok, of Swiftness, or maybe the Ice Blink, but yeah, these are all options. There's no clear winner other than the Bane of the Stricken for solo runs, of course. Okay, that's it for the Marauder, not much here. Actually, if you want to change it to be more entertaining, there needs to be more, there needs to be something more interactive. I don't really have an idea. If you design a set about sentries that shoot stuff that you shoot, I don't know what more there is, and the damage number is not big enough. Even with all these buffs, it seems to be too low in comparison to the other classes. It's on the same level as the Shadow set, but versus what monks can do, for example, it's still not enough. Just remember, monks in live seasons are already clearing G80. Okay, this is the top notch, this is the high end. But I cleared 72 with my monk so far, and I can go higher for sure, because I didn't push. I know I can do more, and 72 seems to be the limit for that spec already. So this is not good. We know that there's a power creep, we know that there's this added dexterity everywhere, and still, I cannot see this beating even the old static charge monk, which doesn't change in the next set, it's just getting buffed with the inner set. Okay, so there needs to be more, there needs to be a change, there needs to be something more interesting and some more power in that spec. Okay, let's hop to the next one, which will be Unhallowed Essence. Here we are talking about the Unhallowed Essence. In the PTR, no one is really using the Unhallowed Essence set because they all say, oh, it didn't change, it's crap and whatever. I say no, it's not crap. It's basically on the same level as the current Shadow set and the Marauder set. I could clear G70 on the very first attempt, and I think it has the potential to clear the higher levels a bit, like up to maybe 75. So it is roughly on the power level of the Marauder set and the Shadow set, but it is more squishy, so you have to play more like a Demon Hunter. However, it will be a very efficient build for farming Torment 10, because the damage output that you produce is instant, it's fast, it's a lot, and it profits a lot from lower health monsters that you have in lower levels because of the quiver that you use. Okay, but let's talk about the set. Okay, here, there's no change. The only change is that the damage reduction and the increased damage here is buffed, like from 40% to 50%, and that's it. That's it. The setup I used for level 70 clear is this one here with the full-grown Unhallowed Essence set and Witching Hour with Focus and Restraint, and the Hellfire Amulet with Ballistics, and of course those two completely mandatory items. Yang's Recurve, extremely powerful version here, and the Dead Man's Legacy. Both are mandatory. Young's Recurve because of the higher attack speed and the cost reduction that you have there, and the Dead Man's Legacy because of the effect, and the new one has up to 100% buff to multi-shot. And so those two items, just as in the Marauder spec, are completely mandatory. You have a little bit more freedom with it than with the Marauder set because you have the Witching Hour here. You can use String of Ears, you can use whatever belt that you think is good for that spec, but the Witching Hour is a lot of damage, and I think it's a very good option for that because you can really evade guys and you can stay on range. I use Wraps of Clarity, of course, you use them everywhere. And Focus and Restraint, and yeah, Hellfire Amulet. Skills I used: Focus always, because this is just the best if we just needed to get hatred from every now and then. All the options that we have for utility are basically gone with the Thrill of the Hunt passive. I was using Entangling Shot a lot in the previous patches, but no need for that anymore. Okay, multi-shot Arsenal. I was playing with Wind Chill. They changed that rune to 10% increased crit chance on the mob that has been hit by that. But this increases your damage in the area, like your area of effect is better, more damage there, but the single target will drop down. And Arsenal is doing a lot more single target damage. Remember the Ballistics passive, it doubles the rockets damage, so in 600% rockets plus 360, that's 960% against 360 for the Wind Chill. And we need the single target damage in that spec. We need it. We have enough area damage, we need the single target spec damage, so no way around Arsenal. All the others, full broadside is even better for the area effect, but doesn't help. Suppression, fire, knockback, crowd control. The immunity the guys are getting is just too much against hard crowd control, which is knockback. Fire at will, we don't need that. We can almost perma spam it, so we don't need the reduction, and it does no buff to us, so no good single target damage. Might be an option with a Shadow Marauder, Shadow set Demon Hunter in the team, but yeah, I still think the Arsenal rune is the best. Volt, Rattling Roll, because we have high toughness, high discipline all the time, and it helps us to survive. It helps us to stun the Rift Guardian in the moment we need it. For example, if Perdition tries to do his attack, and you can just Volt to him and Volt on and he's stunned. It's easier than evading that attack that he does. Vengeance Seath, same as in the Marauder spec. Preparation, Invigoration, this is mandatory because of the discipline buff that we get for the damage. And Wolf Companion, we could use Marked for Death here, for example, so we can get more hatred with the Mortal Enemy rune, for example, but I still think the Wolf is the best buff, especially since we have it up permanently with the Zodiac in the cube. Okay, passives: Awareness, Call the Weak, Thrill of the Hunt, Ambush pairs very nicely with that Quiver, and Ballistics here. And in the cube, Dawn, Visage of Junes, and Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. This means that we have permanent Vengeance, permanent Wolf Companion, and this is such a good stuff. But toughness is a problem of that spec, and ultimately damage as well, because I can clear G70 with it. Okay, here, this is the toughness. This is not much. 85, wow, pretty low. So maybe we even need to use a defensive gem, and then we lose more damage as well. So yeah, the set is playable, it's okay for G70 and below. Going higher will be difficult. The damage is okay, but the toughness will suffer a lot, because there's no real toughness buff here. And the changes for that set, I don't know. Multi-shot is a very nice skill, but we're forced to use multi-shot, which is nice area damage, but we have nothing for single target basically, and I don't see any possible changes here than just buffing the numbers up even more. So yeah, once again, the 6-piece sets don't give us freedom to move around. We just use them and use the skills they want us to use with that, and that's it. Yeah, so much for the Unhallowed Essence set. You can use it for speed farming in lower levels, and there it's very good. Okay, jump to the next one, which will be the Natalia spec. Okay, the Natalia spec. The Natalia spec didn't get any big changes since 2 seasons actually. I was using it in the era, what was it? I don't know, in the time when a level 60 clear was already a high clear. I was rank 1 for a short while when I cleared G59 with that. I ended up on, I don't know what rank, doesn't matter actually. But since then we got the cube, and the cube changed stuff, and especially the crowd control immunity that the monsters have changed a lot, because now we can't use the Stampede anymore. Stampede was a very strong and very good option, but it doesn't work anymore. It was only good because you could cluster the mobs together. Doesn't work anymore, so the meta shifted to Shade with the Fulminator in the cube, and this is still the same. Basically, the only change that the Natalia spec received is here. It's that the Rain of Vengeance cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds now, rather than 2 seconds as it was before, and that's it. We can now use this Mantle of Channeling as shoulders. I don't think the damage buff applies to Rain of Vengeance, because the moment we cast it, we are not channeling, and it clearly says while channeling. I haven't tested it. I don't suspect it really works. It's good for toughness. It's the best option we have in the shoulder, but yeah, no damage buff. The damage buff that we get is only from Vengeance, because that reduced cooldown here doesn't help the Fulminator proc. Fulminator is procced on all monsters anyways, so it doesn't get any more damage from that. We cast Rain of Vengeance a bit more often, so it's easier to cast the 2-to-1 ratio, but we can't have the 1-to-1 ratio, unfortunately, even with very high cooldown. So yeah, the changes are too low, and the damage of that spec is way too low. Just imagine, on current season live, the highest clear is 71 in Europe, I think. Doing 71 even on PTR with the buff on Vengeance and stuff is still fishing. It's not easy, it's hard to do. It's easier than currently on live, of course, but it's not a big difference, so there needs to be more. The spec is just too weak right now. They need to buff it even more. Okay, what I use here, full Natalia gear with high cooldown reduction to test it, but it didn't work properly. I think you need to find the right cooldown reduction to have a new 2-to-1 ratio, and then go with the same stuff as always. You want to have Dawn in the offhand, because you need the Fulminator in the cube. I was fooling around with Dawn in the cube and other things. It's way weaker than the Fulminator version, even now. And then Visage of Tunes, if you need the more hatred, you could use Hexing Pants here, for example, for a bit more damage. And Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, because if you have Vengeance up permanently and you have this channeling stuff here, this ultimately means that you have a little bit more toughness than on current life with the Unity in here, so it's okay, and you get a damage buff from that. So this is also good. But, however, change is too low. We need more damage here, and we need options. I don't want to be forced to use Strafe all the time. There should be an option here. But yeah, please devs, do something about that spec. It's been the same for 2 seasons, and the gameplay didn't change, and right now it's even the weakest, so it's not worth it. It's a lot of effort to play that, and it's not worth it at all currently. So do something here, buff it up, give it something more, add Vengeance to the set buff here. Please, please, please add Vengeance to the cooldown reduction, so that we can finally skip the Zodiac and maybe even Dawn for that spec. This would help a lot. And this is Natalia's, you know? This is the Natalia helm. Look at that lady here. That's the Natalia helm. Hello. Here. Cool. Wow, I don't like the look, but that's the Natalia helm. And now I press the Vengeance button. Whoops. Wow, it transforms. The arms look different, looks more aggressive, but it's still the Natalia helm. So why the hell is Vengeance not in the buff list for the Natalia spec? It has to be there. It fits there in the scheme. It is one buff that we would need here. And possibly even make the 6-piece set that Vengeance gets all runes at once. So not that it's replacing the rockets, like it says here for the personal mortar, instead of homing rockets. No, keep the homing rockets, add the personal mortar stuff, add the damage reduction, add the side cannons, have the hatred regeneration, and give us this. Add those shadows guys and freeze stuff. If you add that, if those 2 things are added in the Natalia spec, 6-piece, gain all runes of vengeance, 2 piece, reduce the cooldown of vengeance by 4 seconds every time you hit. If we would combine that, this might actually be enough to buff that set, and it would fit perfectly well here. Why not? We need more, so why not this? Okay, that was the last part of my Demon Hunter review of patch PTR 2.4. I hope we get more stuff, and I hope we can get up to the level of the current life at least. Current life monk is clearing G80. We need more. I want to play that again. I want to play my characters with more than 1,400 hours. I have more than 2,000 hours on Demon Hunter, but I couldn't play it in the season currently. That's sad. That's very sad. Okay guys, I hope you learned something here. I hope we can get some voices for the Demon Hunter, that the developers do something about it. And you can check out all the gameplay videos I have done with these specs. Nothing with the Natalia because it didn't change. And see you next time, and goodbye.